Deputy Pauline Tully.
And I just want to thank you for facilitating my attendance at the committee meeting today, and to thank the witnesses for their contributions. I suppose the reason I wanted to attend is that I too represent the constituency of Cavan Monaghan, and I'm very aware and conscious of the lack of emergency accommodation available to at-risk women in this constituency. It's a large rural constituency and we don't have a single refuge, and there are 3 staff employed to assist vulnerable women, and I have to, like other speakers, commend the work they do in the German domestic abuse service. But you know, probably the main reason that many women or men do not leave an abusive relationship is the lack of affordable and available accommodation that can rehouse them at short notice. So I'm just wondering, have you had any indication that there will be a refuge provided in either Cavan or Monaghan, or indeed both counties preferably? And I'm conscious that a refuge is not the answer, and that other supports are needed as well. And I do welcome what Mary Mess said about the initiative being taken in Cavan, and I'd love to hear more about that as well. And also, as been mentioned by other speakers, I mean, better coordination of services is required, and preferably under one department. And again, have you any indication that something like this has been considered, or can be achieved? Thank you, Chair.
Deputy.
Deputy, I might respond to that briefly. Please. And the answer to that is no. It's a very simple one. And again, it is an issue. There are lots of moving parts here. There are lots of responses at policy around the guards, around the judiciary, around the family courts, around welfare, the wonderful domestic violence rent supplement. We worked very positively with the Department of Social Protection on introducing that. We've had huge blocks around housing and accommodation. I have to say that straight out. This is just an absolute block. We have also difficulties around health and education, and in terms of really taking on this subject at a very profound level and addressing it directly. In terms of the building of refuges, I think this is something that will have to be done. It can only be done at central government level. It can only be done there. We have projects that we are trying to support. They are philanthropically driven, and by virtue of that, they are restricted according to the desires of the funders and so on. We're fighting away to make sure that is as widespread as possible, trying to make our analysis as broad as possible, trying to make our responses as robust as possible. But the bottom line on this, even if in the case of the accommodation review coming out of TUSLA, that Ireland is to meet its Istanbul recommendations, those standards, which is to have, support for 1 in 10,000 of the population and so on, that we need, for example, an extra 500 units. How that, and it goes back to the question that Senator Ruan raised earlier around design. We need to sit down and plan what that means, and not plan it out of a 19th century model, not some Dickensian model around what this means. And we've all said here in the room this evening, there is before refuge, after refuge, there is a range of responses. There's prevention. But that doesn't happen in a hidden, secret, silent and stigmatized place. That has to be placed front and centre in the community. And I think COVID has taught us that. And I know, because I'm actually relatively new, although I'm an old hippie hack for, social justice, basically, that I can see within the network of the extraordinary work that all of these services provide. It actually provides at frontline community level a visible manifestation in the public arena where this issue can be spoken about. At its best, these centres, yes, they could provide beds and so on and so forth for crisis, people in extremes, but they can also be places where young people who are experiencing violent and oppressive homes, where children are who need therapeutic interventions. And can I say, it isn't only about those who are parents. This happens to single men, to single women who are in extreme distress and need support around what it means to be in a coercive and controlling relationship. And that's driven by all sorts of beliefs and cultural mores within our system that we are long facing down. The mother and baby homes scandal is also a remnant of this, I might say, to completely put the cat among the pigeons. This is all part of a huge cultural trend that we're trying to address. So I think we can do that, but it has to be designed.
Yeah, I'm just going to say as well, we know awareness on the issue of domestic abuse is much better than it was. And before this, there was always a stigma attached to it, as some people referenced, you know, you made your bed, you lie in it. But so there are obviously more, there's more knowledge, and there are more people seeking help then, and not staying in an abusive relationship. But do you feel that the services provided overall are standing still, or do you feel that they are improving? You know, and I don't mean that against the service. I mean, is the support to the services improving, or are they standing still?
Well, I'd ask Lisa to respond to this, but all I can say, what I'm looking at, is that the staff are exhausted and at the point of burnout. They are pushed to the pin of their collars. And remember, in COVID, they were not afforded frontline status as workers in this crisis. They maintained Refuges and stayed open in the light of threats to themselves at a time when we didn't know what the impact of COVID was going to be. All services stayed open and did their absolute best to continue to provide, to meet this crisis and this terrible suffering exacerbated by COVID. So in terms of the responses of frontline workers and the staff, and of everyone sitting in this room and beyond, I think that's almost, you know, unassailable. Your question as to the resourcing, the sustainability, and the robustness of the resources, I think it's a much more serious matter. Sorry, I'm going off on one again, but I'll let Lisa or my colleagues speak.
Mary, thanks, Deputy Tully. Mary's absolutely right. And what came into very sharp focus during COVID was the, you know, consecutive years of lack of investment in this issue and the infrastructure. And, you know, I quote Mary as often saying, you know, it's a 19th century infrastructure for a 21st century problem. But absolutely, even tonight we've heard that the uncertainty around funding impacts the ability to plan forward. You know, this is a contemporary observation. It is, I'm going to say, just from our experience with services, I have yet to come across a service that is 100% funded for everything that they do. They often rely on donors, philanthropic donations, and some of them have also generated income to address the gaps that they have. Now, you know, I'm going to say I'm biased because I've come from a practice background, but this isn't the best use of a manager's time to be trying to raise money to fill gaps. We need to move forward with this issue. We need to create and deliver these responses to women and children so that we can future-proof for those that are living with this now. So in summation there, Deputy Tully, no, there's not sufficient resources being allocated to this issue at all.